Welcome Exiles! In today's video I would like to present my existential crisis on build efficiency. Nah, for real though, I would like to present my Deadeye Crit Molten Blaster. For some context, I've been working on this build for about a week now, and within that time there have been various other creators that have published their own versions of this build. Luckily my take on it is wildly different. I really wanted to focus on making this build three things. Firstly, an endgame budget build, with the total cost of being between 10 and 20 divines. And I know that some of you might think that is not a budget, but for the real endgame it very much is, especially comparing the other versions of this build which are easily in the hundreds of divines, as stat stacking can get really expensive. Secondly, focusing on crit chance and damage bonus, as we are attacking so incredibly fast, nearly 4 times per second. It means you don't need a ridiculously high amount of crit chance. Currently I'm sitting at around 32%, but you can instead invest into a ridiculously high crit damage bonus. Currently I'm sitting at around 872% to essentially solve the DPS on this build. And lastly, keeping it thematically consistent as a fiery crit speed demon. I wanted this build to use Dance with Death Keystone with a one-handed mace and mace skills, with no weapon swapping. This build is completely able to clear all content in the game, including maximum tier of pinnacles and juiced tier 15 and 16 maps. I will say right now that this is not a pinnacle bossing build. It is easily capable of doing them, but it just takes 10 or 20 seconds to do so. The main problem is that this build can be quite squishy to one-shot, so the pinnacle fights are dangerous the longer they go on for. But what this build is a phenomenal mapping or farming build. The main positives are that the playstyle is fun and unique, mechanically easy and satisfying, as well as being quick and reliable. The main negatives are that the playstyle is stressful on your eyes and or visually cluttering. You also get regularly stuck on terrain while holding down Molten Blast, and it is squishy to big hits. I want to show you how this build works, and it's very simple with some cool mechanics in place. For clearing, it is a hold one button down and win sort of build. You don't even need to move, because Molten Blast moves your character forward ever so slightly, and with the amount of attack speed we have, you can hold it down and it will move you just as fast as if you were running, if not faster. You want to be using Ancestral Cry on cooldown because it turns you into an embodiment of calm, providing a ton of bonuses. It increases your damage and makes you faster, as well as giving you 2 additional auto abilities, Volcanic Steps and Volcanic Eruption. For single target, you want to place down a war banner that greatly increases your attack damage, attack speed and accuracy rating. Then place down a Forge Hammer and activate it with either Infernal Cry or Ancestral Cry. There is a cool interaction between Ancestral Cry and Forge Hammer. Usually, to activate the fishes on Forge Hammer, you need some sort of slam skill or totems to do so, but if you are an embodiment of calm through Ancestral Cry, you gain Volcanic Steps as mentioned previously, and because of that, when you hold down Molten Blast, you activate those fishes over and over again. It's really strong for single target damage, but the only problem is that you need Glory to activate Ancestral Cry, and sometimes you might not have that. For example, if you are starting a pinnacle boss fight, you don't have the monsters before the fight to build up that glory, but you can definitely do so during the fight. If you don't have glory for Ancestral Cry, then simply use Infernal Cry to activate the Forge Hammer and then place down 2 seismic totems on it for them to continuously activate those fishes while you Molten Blast the boss. We also utilize Elemental Weakness for extra damage. Let's start things off with the Ascendancy. Why Deadeye? Well, I think it goes without saying that Deadeye is really strong for a variety of builds and it doesn't require much explanation, but essentially Tailwind is great for skill / attack speed as well as defense. Endless Munition provides Molten Blast an extra projectile without any drawbacks, and Point Blank is free damage. Other than that, the Ranger has a really good start on the tree, with many points being pure gold, such as attack speed, accuracy rating and simply increases to damage. I originally wanted to feature cooled shots in this build instead of endless munition, but we genuinely kill things too fast while clearing, so that cooled shots doesn't have time to apply any marks most of the time, which is a massive waste of an Ascendancy point. Moving on to the skill tree, you can see it basically beelines straight to the edge and then splits off up and down. We go up mainly for the crit nodes and down mainly for the surround nodes, but let's start with going up. The first thing we pick along the way is Winter Owl, as we are stacking int and accuracy on a very small scale, but it is still quite efficient to do so. Reaching the first jewel slot here is really important because you're going to want to socket a very specific jewel that affects the notables and small passives around it, that being a time lost emerald that provides crit damage bonus and attack speed based on the amount of allocated notables within a radius, which we have a total of 5, and increased accuracy rating based on allocated small passive nodes, which we have a total of 7. The great thing is that we're not just picking up these notables and passives for the sake of the jewel, as we would take them regardless of the jewel. They are very powerful within themselves, and the crit nodes are absolutely mandatory anyway. Moving higher up, we pick up Throat Seeker for that juicy crit damage bonus, and even higher up, Spectral Ward for some much needed defense. Lastly, we pick up arguably the most important crit cluster on the entire tree, as it consists of 3 major notables: True Strike, For the Jugular, and Deadly Force, along with a bunch of nice small crit passive nodes. Going down the tree now is where we pick up the keystone that this build is built around, Dance with Death, stating that we have 25% increased skill speed while our offhand is empty. This is an extremely powerful keystone when it comes to our total attack speed, and allows us to reach that 0.2 seconds attack time without having to invest into accuracy stacking too much. Right next to this, we also pick up a skill speed cluster, providing us with another 16% increased skill speed, and right next to that we pick up Falcon Dive, which increases our attack speed based off of our accuracy rating. Falcon Dive is at the core of most Molten Blast builds for the accuracy stacking, but as I mentioned, accuracy and stat stacking gets expensive when you really try to make the most out of it. Either way, this is still very effective with the small amount of accuracy and int that we are stacking. Going further down, we pick up yet another crit node, Tainted Strike, and then we arrive at our final destination, the surround nodes. If you're not already aware, the reason behind why we want to pick up essentially all of these is because of an extremely powerful unique helmet, Constricting Command Viper Cap, which states that you require 5 less enemies to be counted as surrounded, which means you are counted as being permanently surrounded at all times, since the default requirement without the helmet is 5, and with the helmet equipped we require 5 less, so 0. But I'm sure you have already seen this, as so many builds are utilising it. I really tried to make this build work without the helmet, as it's the majority of this build's budget, currently sitting at around 7 to 10 divines, but the problem is mana. You see, one of the support gems we link with Molten Blast, Defy 2, states that insufficient mana doesn't prevent the use of the skill, which means it's free to use, and without this one support gem and the use of the helmet, the mana costs are just way too much. Considering we're attacking at around 4 times per second, and we want as high of a level of Molten Blast as possible, it just gets out of hand. As I said, I really tried to make it work without the helmet, but trust me, you have to invest so much into mana, you end up sacrificing everything else, DPS, defense, attack speed, and so on. It's too gimmicky and not worth it. To be honest though, we are not just using this helmet to solve mana, as it provides so much DPS and attack speed through the surround nodes on the tree. Through picking up just 3 notables, Thrill of the Battle, Frantic Fighter and Last Stand, and 6 small passive nodes, we receive a whopping 265% increased attack damage and 20% increased attack speed, also along with 50% increased evasion rating. The very last thing we pick up is Push the Advantage for some extra crit chance, and as a bonus, this general area has 2 jewel sockets, which is good because we get a lot of power out of jewels. Talking about that, I'll finish up the tree section by talking about the various jewels we are using, since there is quite a few and some are unique. I already mentioned one of them, that being the Time Lost Emerald. As for the other rare jewels, which I have 2 of, you want to prioritise increased attack speed and accuracy rating, preferably max roll on both. And after that, pretty much anything you can get which is useful. I've got some lightning pen as my weapon does a good amount of lightning damage, but you could also go for fire pen, projectile damage, attack damage, anything crit, even evasion or attributes. The other jewels are unique, and they are as follows. From Nothing Diamond, with passives in radius of Zealot's Oath can be allocated. This is because around that keystone there are 3 25% increased attack damage notables, which in total provide an extra 75% increased attack damage, which is awesome. Then Megalomaniac Diamond to allocate more useful notables, and this one is a bit tricky because there's actually quite a few things you can go for, and depending on the state of your build you could use different things. Generally I go by what would increase my DPS the most. The very best thing is unfortunately too expensive, costing around 30 divines, and that's a diamond with storm charged. The next best thing is Stand and Deliver, which is what I have. However, if you are level 94, I recommend that is the next thing you pick up with passive points instead. So the next best thing to go for on the diamond would be Cremation. Then after that, I'm not quite sure, but probably some crit nodes such as Overwhelming Strike. You could alternatively go for more defense with something like Bestial Skin or Immaterial. Lastly, we have the Heart of the Well Diamond, which you must have increased crit chance and damage if you're going to get one. And after that, you want damage as extra fire damage, and after that, anything you want. I went for +2 maximum of all elemental resistances. Moving on to the gear, I'll start off with the weapon, and that is going to be a Strife pick for that extra crit damage bonus. And on that you're going to want to prioritise crit chance, damage bonus and attack speed. Then simply as much physical and elemental damage as you can get. The pick that I'm using is around 500 DPS. I bought it with an open prefix for under 1 divine, and then desecrated it with a preserved jawbone, and then unveiled it with an omen of abyssal echoes. I was hoping for a high tier of physical or fire damage, and well, I did get a really high increased physical damage mod, but it's one of those desecrated modifiers with a downside, and that is reduced attack speed, which really sucks. But it's still overall pretty good, especially on the DPS side, and because I already had a tier 2 attack speed, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. On the helmet you need Constricting Command Viper Cap. I already spoke about that previously, so I won't again. On the body armour you want as much life, evasion and energy shield along with any res you may need, and you need at least 40 spirit. On the gloves you need crit damage bonus and attack speed, then you want at least 1 flat damage, preferably fire or physical, and then life and maybe int or dex. I have dex, and you're going to want to get dex on 1 piece of armour to reach the requirement for a high level of Ghost Dance. You also want to socket a cat talisman into the rune socket for increased accuracy rating. In the perfect world you can have 3 rune sockets, but that's really expensive. Best case scenario is probably 2, but honestly I just have 1. On the boots you want 35% increased movement speed or at least 30%, then as much life, evasion and energy shield along with any res you might need. On the amulet you want to prioritise plus levels of projectile skills. Maximum is +3, but that's really expensive, so probably just go for 2 like myself. Then crit damage bonus and as much life, evasion and energy shield and possibly res. For the anoint you want barbaric strength, as it's really strong, providing a massive 45% increased crit damage bonus and some strength. And the downside of increased mana costs of skills doesn't matter whatsoever. It is also a cheap anoint. On one ring, I recommend the new unique ring Grip of Kulamak. Although not mandatory, you can opt in for like 2 breach rings, prismatic rings or accuracy rings instead, but I think it's a really good ring since it provides increased crit chance and damage bonus, as well as damage as extra fire damage and increased energy shield or evasion. And the downsides of the ring are once again totally whatever, you won't feel a difference. On the other ring, I recommend a breach ring with a lot of flat, fire or physical damage and maximum quality for either one of those, along with as much life, evasion and res as you can get. On the belt, just make sure you have 3 charm slots and then simply as much life and any resistances you need. This is also a good place to get more attributes that you may need. I have strength on mine. You need a lot of strength for the requirement of wearing a strife pick. The charms are completely up to you, however I do recommend the unique charm Nagamu's Chosen because it gives you your maximum rage when it is used, and that is a nice little DPS boost. I also recommend Nascent Hope since it makes you immune to freeze, which is huge, and starts recharging your energy shield upon use. Lastly, I'm going to go over the skills. I will mouse over them one by one but won't talk about every single one. The main ones that you're going to want to know about is on Molten Blast, you need Rigwald's Ferocity, and make sure your weapon is on weapon set 1 for extra attack speed. Nova Projectiles, so that you always fire Molten Blast in a circle around you, and Defy 2 to remove all mana costs and make our hits lucky. Something else you should know is that you can run 2 Precisions, Precision 1 and 2, in different skills, and their effects will stack to provide you a total of 80% increased accuracy rating. With all that being said, we have made it to the end of the guide. I would like to thank you for watching this video, I really appreciate it. I hope you find this build interesting and let me know if you try it out. And as always, stay exiled.